early vote. I didn't say Trump was going to win. I didn't say I want Trump to win. I didn't say that we'll definitely know on election day who's going to win before the voting starts. I didn't say that the early vote is inexorably going to continue the way it is. What I did say is that if it continues the way it is, along certain dimensions, which I'll list in a moment, on election day, it'll be clear that Trump's going to win because the Democrats will not be able to make up on election day the current small lead that Democrats have in most of the battleground states on the early vote. Okay.
Can I
Sean has
make,
raised this. Yeah, go ahead.
hold on. I'm sorry, I got to find it somewhere. I'm going
Yeah,
to get on my soapbox for a second
yeah.
because I, I got asked more about your comments yesterday than any time that since we've done this. And I literally was like, I'm on the program. I didn't hear Mark say that. Let me go back and watch this. And why I think this is sort of what Barack Obama would call a teachable moment is I I I think for everyone who watches this, just to understand it, you all were part of this listening to Mark. I literally was going, I was there. He didn't say that. Let me go back. Maybe I missed something or, was scrolling or responding to a comment. But this is what goes on in the media. And I just want people to understand that where there are days, and I dealt with it my entire career, where I'd be like, that's not what I said. Or they're taking that out of context and people go, yeah, whatever. You're a horrible person. I know you said that or you meant it. And I think that like we all were part of this conversation yesterday. We heard what Mark said. It was very clear, and people will take things and this is how narratives go. Now, in this case, it's not hurtful. Like, Mark might have to do some cleanup and we had phone calls, but when people take things that other people say and said they said X, this is where I think a lot of the problem is with our media
Yes,
today.
yes.
So
This program and this platform assumes a lot more knowledge on the part of the audience than most content. That's just our style. And sometimes, and Sean's very good at this, sometimes we need to be a little bit more remedial. There's a difference between politics and campaigns. And one of the biggest weaknesses in political journalism is most political reporters don't know a thing about how campaigns work. It's very idiosyncratic. It's a lot of nuts and bolts, but Dan knows a lot about how fundraising works. Most political reporters have no idea really how you get money in the bank. Okay. So understanding early vote, particularly with all the changes since COVID, is a really labor intensive thing. If you read, and I don't mean to single out any particular reporters for disrespect, but they're representative. If you read this news cycle, New York Times or Wall Street Journal or Washington Post story about the early vote, they are so surface. They are just stringing together quotes from academics and consultants about what they think. There's no rigorous attempt to figure out what's actually going on because it's really hard. And it involves, again, not knowing about politics, but knowing about campaigns. So, what's going on, as far as I understand it, and I'll say again, I believe I said yesterday, my view is informed by people who do know a lot about campaigns, Democrats, Republicans, and independent analysts. And my independent analysts are fantastic because they spend a lot of time with me explaining things. They see the data and they don't have a dog in the hunt. Okay. If the data stays the way it is, and as I said every time on every platform yesterday, if, okay, if it stays, it's going to be clear that Trump's going to win because what's happening now is the percentage, what's called the contribution to the vote, not the total number of, say, black voters in Georgia voting early, but the contribution to the vote of black voters in Georgia is much lower than it would have to be for Trump to win, for Harris to win. As Sean said yesterday, and I think the day before, the biggest spin of a side that's doing disappointing in early vote is these are just moving people from election day voters to early voters. And clearly, some of the Republicans voting early, having been unshackled. In 2000, Donald Trump said, don't vote early. Now the RNC is saying vote early. Clearly, a very high percentage of the people voting early are not new voters. Now, as everybody knows, guys, my tutorial's almost done, and then you guys can annotate, and then we'll move on. If you get people to vote early, you can mark them down as having voted. If you know from your research they're your voters, you no longer have to worry about getting them to send in their absentee ballot. You no longer have to get them to vote on election day. The bandwidth of turnout can move off of them. So that's a big advantage that Democrats have had. Now Republicans are equalizing that somewhat. That's number one. Number two, the Republicans say this isn't happening accidentally. This is testament to our skill in understanding the electorate and getting people to vote. Okay. That's a big deal because the Democrats are counting on a superior get out the vote operation. This suggests maybe their edge is not as great as they believe and many analysts believe. Finally, if we don't see more young people voting in the battleground states or non-white voters voting in these battleground states by the end of early voting, what I said yesterday will stand. The Democrats haven't proven that they can flip the script on same day voting, and Republicans, even though they've moved some of their voters from same day to early, are going to swamp them on election day. Dan, what would you like to add to that?
I think you said it well. Democrats have a problem. The name of the game is to get more votes than your opponent. And right now, the problem for Democrats is, as you said, Republicans are doing very well. I think John Ralston, said it best this morning, which is people have thought there would be this kind of urban firewall, which has been, in effect for the last couple of elections for Democrats. And right now, what you're seeing is a rural red firewall where rural turnout is exceptionally high. That is what happened in 2016. And so far, Democrats are just not turning out their base voters in these urban centers. And it's the same issues that we've been talking about. And you just said it, Mark, young voters, people of color. It doesn't mean they won't ultimately turn out. It doesn't mean that we won't start doing better, in the next couple days or over next weekend. But so far, we are not doing well in our quest to get more votes than the other side.
Sean.
I would just say, look, we had one super PAC tell us that an initial contact with a voter is $12. If they have to chase them all the way to election day, it goes up to $100. So every time you vote early, you're basically saving the team about $88, which is why, so it's not just, it's a combination of getting, banking the vote, then being able to go after low propensity new voters. So that's number one. Number two, you can see the Dems. I mean, Barack Obama was very clear yesterday. He did a social media post. He did a bunch of other appearances where he talked about voting early. I'm voting early. I'm doing this. They know they have a problem. And so I think, look, I said this the other day. I'll say it again. Right now, I'd rather be us than them when it comes to going into election day.
Yeah, and I'd rather wake up every morning to Philadelphia turnouts off the charts, Las Vegas turnouts off the charts, and have you on your back feet.
Yeah.
Right now, it's just not the case. And by the way,
if you
notice, the Mets hat is upside down. It's rally cap time on the D side. We've gone there.
There you go. All right. If you look at people who vote early, they're either regular voters or irregular voters, right? Or they're new. And if they're regular voters, the campaigns have data about them in most of the states. And they know Dan voted for Harris. They know that. They banked Dan's vote for Harris. If Dan is an independent who moved into the state last year and has no voting history and voted early, they don't know who that person voted for necessarily. The large number of people who vote early are regular voters. Okay? So we're not dealing with the huge universe. I will say again, if this keeps up like this, I'm quite confident that the morning of election day, people would look at the numbers and say, there's just no way that Trump's going to lose. But that is a big if, including the fact that some of the Democratic core constituencies are more likely to vote later in early vote, right? The concept of late early vote, not the first 2 days, not the first week, but later in the process, whether it's sending back an absentee ballot or whether it's voting drop box or in person early, whatever it is. Okay. So I'm not predicting Trump's going to win. I'm not predicting we'll know on election day before the vote starts, Trump's going to win. I'm saying, as Dan said, and Democrats will agree, this needs to go in a different direction for them than it has, but they say it will. All right.
And Mark, can I just add one thing for Democrats, which is good news?
Yeah.
If you're running for president, the two people you would want on the Dem side running your campaign are David Plouffe and Jen O'Malley Dillon.
Correct.
They know how to do this. They know where their votes are. They know how to micro target down to the city block, and they know how to get people to the polls. So there is confidence that the people doing this do it better than anyone else on our side. And if anyone's going to, squeak this over the line, it's this team.
They're not all stars. They're in the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
Those two are in the Hall of Fame in American
But
history.
there's only so much you can do, right? I mean, you can have the best coach in the world. It doesn't mean you're going to hit the ball.
Yeah.